That was Todd Rundgren. With us today is North Bergen Bob, who on what would be a very beautiful, just newly spring day, is tooling somewhere in the vicinity of the New York state line on, that would be, what, 9W, Bob?
Yeah, I'm just approaching NW, actually right by the George Washington Bridge.
Are you headed down?
Fort Lee.
Are you headed down to the Ross Landing?
Yeah, I may do that. Actually, that's up ahead a little bit.
Yeah, go down to the Ross Landing.
Yeah.
And look at it for me.
It would be beautiful, but I think they charge it's Saturday today, so they charge a $5 fee. So I'll probably just get on the Parkway, drive a bit.
Hey, it's Good Friday.
You know, you're right. Actually, you're right.
Hey, Bob, wake up.
This is unusual.
It does feel like a Saturday, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
All right. The reason we're getting together telephonically is because with the shows being lined up right now, one of them is Alexandra Chica Bruce, who was a New York City resident right across the river from where you are, in North Bergen, a place where I grew up as well, and that she had sightings of UFOs from her side of the river. And also I had asked her if, I don't know if I said this before, but if she remembers a cylindrical apartment building across the river, which is the one that you lived in, called the Stonehenge, and you had, and this is why we're talking, is because you had said to me some time ago, and I wanted you to elaborate on it, that you had a UFO sighting while you were a resident there. Was that right, Bob?
Actually, I lived right next door in a garden apartment complex, but yeah, right next door to the Stonehenge. And I did have a sighting one evening in August of 2005. While I was walking my dog, it was around 10 o'clock at night. And I would usually walk the dog in the back of the building because actually the view is very, very good. The New York skyline is right there. I'm like right across from 85th Street, Manhattan. And it was a particularly nice evening. So I decided to walk the dog in the rear of the building. And the Stonehenge was to my right.
Okay.
And as I was just approaching the fence, what that is behind the building is a cliff, and there's a fence there. And it's the Palisades. Actually, it's the beginning of the Palisades in New Jersey. And all of a sudden, I heard someone say to the effect, I'm not sure of the exact words. I should have written them down at the time, but I should have written down the experience, and quite frankly, I guess I've been avoiding it. But I heard someone say something to the effect that the aliens have arrived, and then there was a lot of nervous laughter. At that point, I saw this object, this cylindrical object, directly in front of me, actually right past right beyond the fence. I would say it was probably 25 to 30 feet long. It was, I would describe it as a perfect cylinder.
And this had a horizontal attitude, right?
No, it did not. It was perpendicular. In other words, one end was pointed up and one end was pointed down.
Or vertical, okay, yeah.
Completely vertical aspect. And it's, I guess I would call it flight.
Now,
there was no... Go ahead, Keith.
No, I just want to clarify. The voices that you heard, is that from, like, real human beings that might have been up a few floors from you looking at this, too?
I think it had to be somebody who was living in the Stonehenge in one of the apartments there. It was, as I said, a beautiful night. These are balconied apartments. And it's about a 35-story building. I'm not sure where the voice was coming from. Do I think it was coming from the UFO? Probably not. It was probably somebody on his balcony who saw this, and he couldn't believe what he saw.
How many feet away from it was it from you, would you say? Or yards, or what?
Well, let me put it to you this way. The object was so close and moving so slow that if there had not been a fence and a cliff there, I would have been able to run up to it and grab it. That's how close it was. I mean, obviously an excellent look at it. It was directly in front of me for at least a couple of seconds.
I mean, was this thing as big as say, a two-prop plane or something like that?
I would say it was 20 to 30 feet long.
Okay.
Probably closer to 30 feet long. Probably around a foot in diameter. I would compare the size of it to a rather tall light pole, if you can imagine that.
But you never saw it approach. In other words, were you looking elsewhere, and then when you directed your eyes out to the river, bang, it was there?
Exactly.
Jeez.
That's exactly the case. It was almost perfect timing. Another strange thing, it was not metallic in color at all. It was half black and half white. The bottom appeared to be black, and the top was white.
And this is this is at nighttime. Is that correct?
This is around 10 o'clock at night.
Okay.
There was no sound at all coming from it. Completely still.
Was it illuminated at all by lights either on top, on the bottom, around the equator, or anything like that?
If it was illuminated, it was completely diffuse and coming from within it, completely evenly. So I didn't see any obvious lights.
Was it windowed or anything like that?
No, there were no windows. It was a perfect cylindrical object. I can't imagine that there were any beings in there. If there were, I mean, they would have had to have been extremely small. But it seemed like it was, I would say, looking back on the experience, it must have been curious about the Stonehenge, because it evidently came from around the base of the Stonehenge. And as we were discussing this before, if you do a Google satellite map on the Stonehenge, it appears to be almost an otherworldly type object from the side.
I was going to say the UFO probably thought it was the mothership.
Who knows? Right.
And folks, also, what Bob is talking about, if you do a Google search, you can put in Stonehenge and North Bergen. Is that correct?
Right.
What street would that be around?
Well, I just did one before. Actually, the actual address is 8200 Boulevard East, North Bergen, New Jersey.
And what's the nearest intersecting street? Is it 78th or something like that?
It would be, I think if you look for Bulls Ferry Road or 82nd Street.
Okay, that's right across from the park, too, isn't it? Yeah.
Right. It's right across from North Hudson Park. And as you know, there were a lot of sightings back in the 70s and 80s.
Well, real quick, let me tell you about one of the sightings I had in the park. It was 1982. And who should I see in the park but Richard Castellano, who was the character that played Clemenzo.
I knew him as well. He lived in the Stonehenge.
You knew him? How about that?
Well, not that I knew him, but I saw him many times. He used to sit in the park feeding the pigeons.
Did you remember that yellow 1953 Merc he had?
His wife still has it. His wife was an actress. She still lives there. She's still driving around in that thing. She hasn't kept it up in shape. I saw her last summer with, who's that actor from Rocky? He's an older guy. Forget his name.
Oh, Bert. Bert something, yeah.
Bert something or other, yeah.
Yeah, he played his brother-in-law.
Right.
I gotta scan this photo I took of him. He's got this big old pie face. He's passed on now, but yeah, I took his picture and I got to put it up on the website now that we've talked. It'll be there by the time we do this interview. This interview is posted, but it's so funny because I didn't want to hassle him. He was with somebody else, another guy.
Right.
So I came up to him. I said, Mr. Castellano, I know you're on your own private time. I said, do you mind? Can I take a photo of you? So he puts his hand on my shoulder. He goes, hey, kid, I'll tell you, I'm going to let you do it. You know why? Because I like the way you come up to me. He was just like Clemenzo, I was going to say.
He was exactly like Clemenzo. Exactly.
Clemenzo, I'll let you have your own family. Never mind. All right. So that was that. That's excellent, Bob. I didn't know you actually had seen where he hung out. He also used to do dishes in Guttenberg in that diner on Bergen Line Avenue. Don't ask me why.
Wow, never heard of that.
Yeah, one of my friends had a sighting of Castellano doing that, and I don't know if they were filming something or whatever. Plus, his kid played hockey at Fairleigh Dickinson, and he'd show up at the old Bergen Mall Arena. So anyway, let's get back to the better stuff, and that is UFOs. So we were talking about where people could get a coordinate fix on, taking a look at that building. And the area about which you're speaking. So now, this thing's in front of you. How long was this encounter?
It didn't last any more than from the time I first saw it until it disappeared, 50 seconds at the most. But it appeared to be curious about, because it was going like along the edge of the cliff, and then it sort of, towards the end of the apartment complex, it sort of just went up into the sky, and it appeared to be leaning forward as though to accelerate. And that's when I lost sight of it.
Let me ask you this. Did any of the hairs in the back of your neck actually go up? And two, did you get any goose flesh from the experience?
Well, that's one of the strange things about it is I was extremely calm, never nervous about it at all. I would not think that someone 20 or 30 feet away from something that is clearly, I'm not going to say not human because it may well have been human, but clearly outside of my own experience, outside of our known experience. I thought that I would react rather nervously. I'm actually more nervous now, Keith, than I was then.
Well, that's because, I'm a lot nastier an entity to deal with than they are.
Right.
Did the dog react at all?
I don't remember that. I don't think I even took a look at the dog at that point.
The reason I'm saying this is because when I had my first encounter up in Vermont, when I was walking to a college radio station to do a shift from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m., I was walking along, and it was a cold December night just before Christmas, very clear, as they are up there, and of course it's rural, so the sky was just absolutely littered with stars. But as I was walking, I heard these dogs baying, which I never heard every week I walked there. I never heard that. This night they were baying, and they weren't just baying like let's bark at Keith who's walking up the street. They were doing the old oh, you know what I mean? I mean, this was like the hounds of the Baskervilles. So I stopped because it was so blood-curdling. I looked around like, what's making them do that? I look up and bang, there it is. And mine was different. It was somewhat round. It had a light at the top and at the bottom, and it had one around what I would call the equator. And it was a band of light, and within that band of light, there was a brighter light that was making its way around. It was making passes. And I looked as long as I could, but when you keep your eyes open in the cold air, they start to water. You can't do much about it.
Yeah.
And what the heck was that? Was that you? Were you passing gas there?
I went off the road there. Yeah, I was drinking coffee over here while listening to you. And
now, you see, Vyzygoth does not like people who are on cell phones and drink coffee and try to drive at the same time.
I'm not drunk on my Starbucks, trust me.
Well, at any rate, what happened was...
Pull over here. Okay, go ahead.
I had to blink my eyes because, I couldn't see anymore. I dipped my head, I kind of shook out the tears or whatever. When I looked back up, it was gone. I went ahead and mentioned it on air that night, and then the next day, front-page story, the Boston Globe was sightings from West Virginia up through the Northeast. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because with you, did you talk this around at all? Like, did anybody else see anything? Was there anything in the papers that was reported?
I don't remember seeing anything. I did not ask around. One thing I meant to do was to post something in the Stonehenge and see that if somebody else must have seen it.
Was there any urban legend, and not that it might have been mythical or false, but was there ever any talk about stuff that went on around the Stonehenge?
Well, every now and then, every few years, they do something in the local paper, about UFOs in North Bergen, in particular in the park. Actually, they had something a few months ago concerning the sightings, concerning the actual intermittent sightings since the famous case back in the 70s. People do talk, yeah.
Well, at that time also, there was a sighting in the Oradell Reservoir. Are you familiar with that?
Sure.
With the reservoir, yeah. It was at the wintertime, and people claim they saw something, and that was all, sure. But what was interesting was where that craft supposedly was, there was a cylindrical hole melted in the ice on the reservoir.
Wow.
And my parents saw something at dusk when we were living in Palisades Park with a very good view out to the west across Overpet Creek, which you know the whole lay of the land there. Out you could see the Kittatinnies.
Right.
Or at the northern end of it, which would be around Patterson. Well, they saw something, and I came home, and they were all sitting out in lawn chairs. I guess they had a little barbecue going out in the backyard, and everybody said that they saw something that just stood in the sky. It had already left before I got there because it knew better. No, and so my parents, what do they care about what's going on? But they said, what in the world was that? And everybody at the party saw it too. And that was before they started throwing back a couple of brewskis. So, at any rate, stuff definitely happened. But now that was not the only sighting. Is that the only sighting you've ever had?
Actually, I had one in the early 90s up towards the New York State border. I guess the Hudson Valley, somewhere towards the Hudson Valley.
Were you driving?
Very close to the New York State border. No, we were. This was with my wife at the time, now my ex-wife. We were feeding some pigeons by a lake.
Are we talking? Which one would that be? Is that the up the Seven Lakes region around Bear Mountain?
Actually, no. This is still in New Jersey. And so it's sort of like an abandoned corporate park. They had a lake with pigeons and geese. We were feeding the pigeons one fine spring day, I guess. And we brought our camera with us, and we filmed this thing. I saw something in the sky, and it didn't look like a normal plane or helicopter. And I put it on full magnification. When we got home, we replayed it and put it in slow motion. It appeared to be God knows what. It wasn't a plane. It was not a helicopter. It was certainly metallic because you could see the sun shining off it, but it appeared to be rotating and maybe changing shape, or it had, very amorphous type of shape. Either one.
And I'm not trying to be nitpicking about this. I'm just trying to... There was some stuff that went on up there I didn't really understand, and I'll get to that in a minute. But can you tell me where you were? Were you near the river? Were you, were you in Montvale or something like that, or?
Actually, the town is Rockley, New Jersey, a very small town, right
sure.
to the New York State border.
Yeah, there's a driving range there, right? Right across the.
It's north of the golf course. There's a golf course.
Okay.
I guess there is a driving range. You're right, off of 9W, yeah.
I almost started an international incident there once.
You did?
Well, I'm a horrible golfer, and I'm lefty. So I was driving, and there's another flank of places where you can drive, I'd say about 30 feet away from you. So in other words, right-handers would not be a threat to the people on that flank. Being lefty, though, what happened was, man, I sliced it like you can't believe. And this sucker was heading toward like 12 Asian people. And man, they parted like the Red Sea.
Yeah, you're lucky they were South Korean. So they were on that side.
Was that okay? And it was just like, Marine, tonight you die. So at any rate, okay, it's up there. The reason I'm saying it, because that's also very interesting, because what is located there is the Lamont.
Right. There's an observatory
yep.
there. That's right.
And that factors into the 9/11 situation about what they recorded with regard to spikes in ground tremors relating to the towers bombings, supposedly, and then the collapses. So you were in that area. And, that's a pretty funky area also, but I don't know that there's anything up there that might be a black op. Of course, you're only maybe 50 miles south of West Point, too, at that point, are you not? Or
right.
even, yeah.
That's right, yeah, probably not even that far. But strange as we're talking about this,
You're there now?
Getting ready to turn around, and I just passed the observatory, and now I'm in the corporate park. was completely unplanned, by the way.
Yeah, it was, isn't it? I mean, this is the synchronicities.
Absolutely.
And you know, I can see it all. That's what's so strange. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm where you are right now. I mean, not that I'm...
I used to work here. I used to work here. Pan Am used to be, they used to have their, not their headquarters, but their IT headquarters right here, and that's where I got familiar with this park, and I'm just driving around the area right now, and the lake is here. I see the geese. But, the incident was very unspectacular, the one in 94, except for the fact that I got it on tape, and clearly it's not a helicopter. It doesn't appear to be anything that I know.
Now, what did you record it on? Was it 8mm or?
It was the Super VHS.
Okay.
Yeah, non-digital. So the magnification is completely from the lens and not digitally manipulated. All I can say about it was interesting. It was an interesting sighting.
Now, I don't, this may not be applicable at all, but what I wanted to tell you about some things that were going on up there. I had a friend that moved up into, what would that be, Ringwood. And it was, we're talking Ringwood in 1970, like 4, 3.
Right.
And, so it was very undersettled at that point. And we used to take walks sometimes and just walk straight into the woods. And we came upon, stuff that was just like, what is this? And one of them was this big facility that you couldn't see from anywhere outside of the woods. And I don't even remember what it was. It had, a high fence. It had barbed wire, supposedly electrified gates. And, it's caution, don't do this, don't do that, da-da-da-da. And I never really made sense of what that thing was. And the fact that so few people seem to know about it, including the gentleman who moved up there and with whom I visited.
This was in, what, about the early 70s, you said?
Yeah, early 70s, and this was like in the Wanacue, Ringwood area.
Where was the jungle habitat? Remember the jungle habitat?
Oof.
Used to be an amusement park with, I guess they had rides, but they also had animals. Are
you talking about Jackson?
No. You're thinking about there's an actual amusement park down there now. What is it, Six Flags? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I guess it got turned into that, yeah.
There used to be something called Jungle Habitat, which was like a safari type of amusement park with, jungle animals.
Whereabouts?
I think right about there, right about in the Ringwood area.
Jeez.
But I could be wrong.
Well, what I also found there was, and this has not got anything to do with UFOs, this is just historical. What we also came upon were the remnants of some kind of gravity-driven ore carts. That would be four-wheelers, when they would mine ore up in the mountains in the Ringwood area.
Right.
And then we'd run the ore carts to wherever they offloaded them down these rails. And so we came across the remnants of some very sturdy concrete supports, that you would have every so many feet when you're, running basically what a railroad car, so to speak. It would be like what you saw with coal mining in the old days. That's what this was. And they must have sent them right down the tracks. And we found a lot of that stuff in disarray and rusted, but it was just fascinating. And there's another thing up there too. Have you ever been to Skylands Manor?
Actually, no, I haven't.
Well, it's changed a lot now. I forgot what they call it. It's a state park now, I think. And they give tours, but there was an old Jacobean mansion there, beautiful. And it was like Gatsbyan, and it had this big grass veranda with this stone railing around it. And I swear, you could go back in time just looking out to the north. But the deal was, the gentleman who owned that was somebody who was a pretty heavy hitter financially, but was ostracized and blackballed by the Laurellards. And that would be, if you remember the Laurellards, where they went to photography too? I'm thinking, like with the first cameras, like, I don't know, what do they call those land cameras? You know what I mean? Where you took the shot and the thing came out. Does that ring a bell at all anyway?
Not really.
Okay, yeah, I'm rambling here. The mind is a terrible thing to lose. But the thing was, it was Laura Lards, might have been the Harrimans too, of Averill Harriman fame and all that. And these guys lived in Tuxedo, which was the absolute hoity-toity place to live. And this guy was blackballed from moving into the neighborhood. He was shunned. So he just went right across the state line, and he built this beautiful mansion, this Jacobean mansion, but he built it in sight of those who shunned him, which I thought was so cool.
Right, yeah.
And that's the story of Sky. If anybody wants to do that, just do a search on Skylands Manor, and you'll see where that takes you. But at the time, it was not very well used. It had already been converted for a short and disastrous time. I could think of some girls' school. It might even been a junior college or something. The man's name, who escapes me now, had a daughter who moved to Washington, D.C., and I wrote her asking her if she would grant me an interview to do an article on it. And she wrote back. She was very nice. She said, I can't do that. She goes, because the memory of it is still very bitter for all that took place there. And I just can't do it for personal purposes, which I thought was kind of cool. But that was a very funky place as well, in a part of New Jersey. Even though, it's so close to New York City and urban blight, it also is not very well known about,
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now, if by all means, I went off there on a screed, but I don't know if you have any more sightings. If not, there was one that I had. I don't know if you're finished yet. So, Bob, by all means, do you want to pick that up?
Well, I think I'm finished with my sightings. No, I haven't had any other sightings since the one in 2005. I would love to. I'm still trying to figure out the significance of what I experienced in 2005. So.
Oh, well, now
it was pretty unusual.
With you didn't have the internet at the time I had the three sightings. The first one was in '78. No, I'm sorry. I had one in '75 when I went cross country with Robust Fellow, the late George Braun. We had one out in the Utah desert. That was the first one, 75, and then I had the one in 78. I was alone for that, but of course that was reported in the Boston Globe. And the last one we had was probably around 84 or 5, when a lady Biz and I saw something that was moving from east to west, what I would say across the town of Pagoda and Richfield Park. And I swore it was a dirigible. And this is what I said with Chica on the interview that accompanied yours, and that is we thought it was definitely a dirigible that might have been heading down to Teterboro, where they usually moor dirigibles when they're around to photograph a Monday night football game or something. That would have all made sense. Problem was, we looked at it. It was quiet, and we thought it was weird that it would be so low, and at that hour of the night. And what happened was, we were standing there. I mean, it grabbed our attention. We were only one block away from a very main street. In fact, that's the name of Main Street. It turns into DeGraw.
Right.
As it heads out to Overpeck Creek in Leonia. And we stood there, and what happened was there were low-flying clouds that night. Very unusual. It was a high sky and very star-lit, but there were low clouds. And these bank of clouds came by going the opposite way from west to east, so we figured we'd wait until it went by, the clouds did, to pick up the sighting on this, what we thought was a dirigible, and it wasn't moving fast. Well, it had only like 10 seconds, 15 seconds, the cloud bank moved on, and the thing was gone. And we looked at each other going what is the story with that?
And it looked like a blimp.
Yeah, if somebody said, that was a blimp or something like that, I had no problem with that.
Right.
And maybe it was, but the thing that perturbed us, well, not perturbed us, but I guess unsettled us, was that in only 15 seconds, the thing was gone. And
usually you would hear it. Blimps usually give off a sound, right?
Whenever they change, right, whenever they try to grab elevation, as far as I know, or change directions, they shoot out something, I guess, some kind of release, or a jet of air or something like that that'll push them off in the opposite direction from where they release it. So you usually do hear them, with these releases like these, psh, yeah. And you can hear an engine going sometimes too, that tail prop.
Right.
But this didn't make any noise, but I could have lived with that too, because it still seemed like it was a blimp, but strange that it would be out at that hour. But for it to completely disappear from the view that we had and the miles that we had of visibility, that's what bothered us. It's like, okay, so now what was that we saw? And that's what I told Chica too, that, this is unusual, but it's one of those also what they would call cigar-shaped UFO models that you do hear a lot about. Now, where I was going with this is that there was no internet in the days when, I had these 3 sightings. Yeah. But you do. Did you ever go into any chat room or blog or kick it around with, like asking anybody out there, did you see what I saw the other night?
I didn't do that, Chief, but I did do a lot of searching, Google searches for cylindrical-shaped UFOs, and I really didn't come across anything really quite like what I saw.
You didn't find a match, huh?
Cylinder-shaped, yeah, but half black and half white? No, I don't think there's any out there. I know that there were objects seen, were photographed off the face of Mars and the moon and the Skywalker Ranch in Utah that seemed to be somewhat like the objects that I saw.
Well, to me, it's it's not usual to have sightings in that area. And when they do occur, they pretty much ripple through everyone because that's such a densely populated area.
Exactly, right.
And I know since I've been down there, they had some sightings apparently in Carteret a couple of years ago where they thought it was a whole formation. Through central Jersey, they saw it.
Right. It was fairly close to the Turnpike in Newark Airport, and people by the dozens were pulling over to look at this. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Now, I've asked Pilot Pete, who flies commercially, and he has never seen any, but he has talked to other pilots who have.
Right.
And I got to ask Freak Lemon, because he's a commercial pilot too, but also is a retired fighter pilot on Naval Reserves. And I got to ask him if he has or anybody else has. But, I mean, there's no doubt about that there's something going on. We all know there has been. And I think the information has definitely been murky, a bit confused, deliberately, disinfo, misinfo. We really don't know what the whole purpose of this is and if it's government-driven solely. But, I mean, you said to me off mic, and there's no reason we can't talk about it now. And I told you I was going to ask you a question that would beg your opinion. But the point is, you kind of feel, and I do too, that there's something otherworldly about this, despite the fact that the government may know much about it and actually feed or find it useful for it to be discovered every so often so people don't really know the truth about what's shaking. Now, you believe also, no matter what that's based on, that we're dealing with something beyond just human beings. Is that correct?
Well, I think clearly we're not the only intelligent, I put that in quotes, species in the universe. Every time, we hear something about the size of the universe, it gets larger and larger, by many, many factors. So we can't even come to a conclusion as to how big our environment is, our universe.
All right, now here's the question that I told you I'd ask, and we'll probably bring it to an end with this one. I'm asking it because this is my belief, and it doesn't have to be yours, but here goes, because I got a feeling I know how you're going to answer. I think most people will. Is there something about the UFOs that you believe might be revealed for something down the road in the near or distant future?
Actually, I'm really don't know how to answer that. I think they're inextricably linked with us. Whether there's going to be a revelation, you mean like by the government? Is that what you mean?
That / they make themselves known / and we're headed for an epoch that I guess has been hinted at for millennia, and which even perhaps the scripture is very clear about. So, yeah, I'd say those 3 categories. Are we headed for an event where it's all going to be revealed?
Well, I think it's gradually becoming revealed to people like us. I mean, look at my reaction to the event that I had. Here's an object that's 20 or 30 feet away. It's clearly defying gravity, completely quiet, probably 30 feet long. A solid material object, apparently. Okay? Look at my reaction to it. We've been brought up, people of our generation and younger, to not be so surprised, at this prospect. So is there going to be a government announcement? I don't think there'll be a government announcement, but I think it's slowly becoming indisputable that we're not alone here.
I've been doing some interviews. I hope to do more. It's one of these themes that I didn't really choose in a sense, but it kind of chose me. And it puts me out there, I would call it like, in the coast-to-coast area, which I'm not real comfortable with, but on the other hand, too, it doesn't mean that it's not informative or entertaining and not worth it because it's part of our lives. And that is any kind of connection it might be between UFOs, be they government or otherworldly, and whether or not there is what we would call a station or a place from which they emanate, which might have something to do with a portal in Antarctica. Because that's another place that has reported activity and which has been also kind of cloaked from most of our observations or questions. And that's gone on now, easily over a century. And especially in the last half century where there's more ability for travel and to find things out, and yet still Antarctica, the true center of it, not too many people know too much about it out here in the regular world. So, that's where I'm going with it. I'm wondering if what's above us often it comes from what's below us.
Well, who knows? Who knows? One other odd thing about my experience a couple of years ago was that it was right on the cliffs, and they've been actually digging into the palisades, the cliffs that never had houses built on them. And they've been doing this for the last few years because of the real estate boom, of the recent real estate boom, now turned to bust. But who knows? Maybe we're disturbing their world in some way, and it was right by the Hudson River as well. So, big space out there. We don't know what's happening, right under our noses.
Also, check out if you want to, because I've passed by this at times, and I didn't really stay there long. I guess it might have been something that popped up when I was looking for something else. But I believe that there is a whole forum that is dealing with sightings, especially in what you would call the lower Hudson Valley up through to the mid-Hudson Valley. And we're talking expressly, I think, about Newburgh, Bear Mountain, Peekskill, that kind of area. Where there seems to be some activity. And, of course, it seems most of the time to come at night, although the incident with my family was at dusk. But most of the stuff seems to happen at night. And, of course, if you're in a rural area like Upper Hudson Valley, there's more things are very visible, let's put it that way. So for you to see something, right dead center in the New York sprawl is very interesting. But even more so, you were fortunate because it was in that proximity to you. Where there was no getting away from the fact that, it made it so very, very evident.
Well, it was sort of right in my face.
Yes.
It was particularly interested in me. I don't feel like I'm special because of it, but I think the experience is extremely special, almost unique.
And you may have said this, but I lost it if you did. What time of the year was it?
This was, I would say, mid-August.
Okay.
Mid-August. Completely clear night, completely still. There was no wind at all. And I'm sure some people would try to be bumped, as a balloon. It's not a balloon, for sure.
Swamp gas, baby.
Right, exactly.
Let's see. I'm thinking that about mine. All happened. I don't think the wintertime or anything has anything to do with it, really. But. There's something else that I wanted to hit you with, and I'm just struggling to try to get back to it. But anyway, I'm not going to waste any time on that. But again, if you get a chance, are you ever going to digitize, by the way, that video that you took?
Well, if I can get a hold of it, I'm going to try to talk to my ex-wife and see if she'll give it back to me.
Okay, boy. Well, you know, the only problem with that, too, though, I would think, you know, Bob, is that that video may have already started to
deteriorate.
Yeah, unless it was kept in some kind of container and airtight, and if, in fact, it isn't in a landfill because she pitched it.
Well, I'm going to see if I can get it, but, you know, the thing is, as I said, it was really not spectacular in any sense. I'm sure there are thousands of videos quite like it. The only thing is that you can see it was extremely high up, and it was not a helicopter or a plane. It was definitely an unusual object that was moving as fast as a plane, at least as fast as a plane.
One last question, really, the last question. In 1967, in the summer, you were living in North Bergen, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, it was summer vacation, so you weren't at school.
Right.
Do you remember that one afternoon, I think it was probably 2 or 3 o'clock, when the meteor passed over New Jersey? I mean, made sounds, was flaming white and blue. Do you remember that at all?
You know, I don't remember that at all, Keith. Not at all. I'll have to do a Google search on it.
Well, we came, yeah, because, I mean, this is all recollection. I'm thinking it's 67, maybe 68.
Right.
But we were coming out, you know, we used to play stickball and basketball at the local school yard. We went down to the Main Street, Cedar Lane in Teaneck. We went to our favorite deli, popped a couple of, 16-ounce Royal Crown Colas, and walk out, and this thing goes, shh, and we're looking at it going, okay, our lives are over, this is some kind of bad omen, and we thought it landed in Hackensack, that's how low it seemed to be, and it wound up, landing in, Newfoundland. And, see if you can find that out, because looking at that thing, it was almost like, what do? Do we bow down and worship it, or, go home and prepare for the end?
Right.
Just a bunch of us walking out of the delicatessen going, oh, great, this is the end of our lives. All right, look, I won't keep you any longer, but I got to ask you, although I told you it was the last question, I lied. Where are you now?
Actually, right now I think this is Leonia. I'm driving back to Jersey City to pick up my friend, and we'll go and spend the rest of the day. It's daylight savings time now, so it should be fairly nice for a few more hours.
What are you doing? You trucking on 95?
Actually, I'm not sure of the road here. No, it's a side street. Just got through Englewood. I think this is Leonia. I think that's the next town.
Grand Avenue.
It's probably Grand Avenue. I think it is. Yeah.
Oh, you're killing me.
Run down, but the day's nice.
You're killing me. I'm on your passenger seat. I can see this all.
Spring. Hey, man, it's the first full day of spring.
Yeah. Well, the greatest thing about being up there, too, in the spring is that, which we don't have down here, is the spring color. And when the forsythias turn so yellow.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's beautiful. All right, listen, thanks very much, Bob, for spending the time with us, and it's good to hear from you again. The photos that you had sent me a long time ago, one of them is kind of like just with me always, and that is the shot of the front of Robert Fulton School. Well, not the front, but the 75th Street side.
Well, we share certain things like that. So
yeah, we lived on the same street.
We went to how many of the same schools? Robert Fulton,
yep.
Jersey City.
Yep, Jersey City State, Fairleigh.
Right, Fairleigh. I guess we've nearly crossed each other's paths. Just missed it by a year or so, I guess. Yeah,
and one other personage who was a guest with us for some time, and also with Michael Trudeau when he was at GCN, and she runs ARC Institute, which produces heirloom seeds, which is something everybody should think about. Jerry Guidetti.
Exactly.
Jerry lives out in Oregon and kind of has left the scene and given the business over to her daughter, but Jerry winds up 2 years ahead of me, and she was at Robert Fulton, North Bergen High, and Fairleigh Dickinson.
Like that. I'll tell you, the names always seem familiar to me. You remember the names oftentimes. You don't, you're not friends with somebody, but going through your books, you remember people's names. The name does seem familiar to me.
And Jerry wound up being a TA, a teacher's assistant, for a guy I had for science. Oh, boy. A professor. Oh, man, I'm not going to get it. And I'm just wondering if you know him, too. Very strange name. It was like with an IZ or something like that. But she was his TA, which means that when I was in his class, she was the young lady at the time who was, getting all this stuff in order.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's just so spooky. And like I said, she's out in Oregon and has gone on to...
Amazing, yeah. She's had a career and
yep.
she's done a lot of good.
So that means people who grew up in North Bergen go on to higher education. So that's good.
Exactly.
So, all right, listen, thanks very much for being with us, and we'll be talking soon, but I'm also glad you came back my way again, Bob.
Hey, Keith, I really appreciate it. You're a great guy to talk to. As I said, you made me more nervous than the UFO I saw back in 2005. But you quickly put me at ease, and I appreciate that. That's, I think you're good.
All right, drive safely, and we'll talk soon.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Bye-bye, Bob.
Bye-bye.